Thus, members of the jury, the accused, far from being the respectable American businessman he pretends to be, is nothing but a hired killer, whose assignment, which he attempted but did not fulfill, was the murder of Edgar Dryden, a top British scientist whose work represents a major threat to the world's illegal drugs industry. I shall now call my first witness.
Just a moment, Mr. Logan. Before you do, there are one or two points that you haven't dealt with. You say at the time this attempted murder took place, the accused was over 6 miles from his intended victim.
Yes, my lord.
And that a high-velocity rifle was to be used for the murder attempt.
Yes, my lord. If you would bear with me...
6 miles, Mr. Logan? I know of no rifle that is effective at that range.
My lord, at this stage, I'm deliberately refraining from explaining in detail the method the accused used in his attempt on Mr. Dryden's life. That is because the police wish me to make a special application in relation to this evidence.
Oh, what?
Well, the chief constable and the head of Fulchester's CID feel that it would be most undesirable if this method were disclosed in open court or in the press.
Will you be calling the chief constable and the CID to explain why this is so?
No, my lord, it is a request.
Well, it can't be a very good method, Mr. Logan, otherwise the charge would be murder, not attempted murder.
My lord, Mr. Dryden's life was preserved by an element of luck which might not arise in any similar incident in the future.
Well, Mr. Logan, either make your application or call your first witness.
Thank you, my lord. Now, as I am anxious for the court to understand why anybody should want to have Mr. Dryden killed, I shall call him first to explain in detail the nature of his scientific research.
Yes, very well, Mr. Logan, but not too much detail, I hope.
No more than is absolutely necessary, my lord. Thank you, Mr. Dryden. A most impressive list of qualifications. You have also published several papers on the application of artificial Earth satellites.
And lunar satellites and solar satellites.
When did you first discuss their uses?
In 1947, 2 years after Clarke's article in Wireless World.
What, you mean Arthur C. Clarke, the British scientist?
Yes, my lord. He was the first man to foresee the possibility of communication satellites.
Now, Mr. Dryden...
He also wrote a number of science fiction novels, Mr. Logan.
Indeed, my lord. Mr. Dryden, would...
Including the screenplay of the film 2001. Well, carry on, Mr. Logan.
Oh, thank you, my lord. Mr. Dryden, would you tell the court about the paper you published in 1957 and the bearing it has on your present work?
Yes, 1957 was the IGY.
The International Geophysical Year, Mr. Dryden?
Yes, my lord. It actually lasted from the middle of 1957 to the end of 1958. And during that period, Russia and the United States launched the first artificial satellites. Well, I was one of the earliest to suggest that satellites could be used to monitor the health of world crops and to provide a warning system when they were threatened with disease.
How?
Infrared analysis is one method. The color variation of diseased crops shows up quite clearly from a height of 200 miles, even when it's not necessarily apparent to someone actually on the ground.
I see, thank you.
And were your theories on crop surveillance put into practice?
Yes, the United States government are now providing underdeveloped countries with a steady stream of information on crop well-being. Even specific fields in remote areas have been pinpointed and remedial treatment suggested.
Surely, Mr. Dryden, before you could recommend treatment, you would have to know what the crop was.
That's true, my lord, but identifying a particular crop in an individual field is no problem with high-definition cameras taken from a modern satellite. Every type of crop has its own fingerprints, if you like. The light reflected from a field of wheat, when examined on a spectrum analyzer, is quite a different light from that of, say, a field of brassica, cabbages and so on.
Yes, this facility for identifying crops from satellites has a direct bearing on the case before us, my lord.
I'm delighted to hear it, Mr. Logan.
Yes. Now, Mr. Dryden, just before your return to this country in 1961 from the USA, did you submit a special paper on the use of satellites to the American Federal Bureau of Narcotics?
Yes.
And will you please outline to the court the contents of that paper?
I suggested the use of an unmanned satellite to determine and locate those areas throughout the world where Papaver somniferum was being grown in commercial quantities.
Yes, Papaver somniferum is
the opium poppy. The resin extracted from the seed pod is one of the basic ingredients for the production of morphine and heroin.
And were the Narcotics Bureau interested in your suggestion?
Yes, very. In fact, only the Americans appear to be interested in stamping out narcotics on a global scale. While I was preparing the paper, I discussed it in some length with the late Harry J. Anslinger, then head of the Narcotics Bureau. He was felt very keenly about American aid going to countries whose governments turned a blind eye to opium production. At the time, he was receiving positive information from U-2 spy plane flights using my techniques. A proper program was just getting underway when the flights had to be curtailed following the Gary Powers incident over Russia.
How widespread is the cultivation of the opium poppy?
Judging from the amount of morphine and heroin reaching the United States, the Narcotics Bureau have estimated that the total acreage under cultivation must be about 1 billion. Up to that time, they only knew the location of half that acreage.
By a billion, you mean the American billion?
Yes, ma'am.
And what happened after you submitted your paper?
Well, nothing happened immediately. In 1961, I returned to this country and did narcotics research for the Home Office. Then in 1965, I received a request to return to the United States because the Narcotics Bureau wanted me to carry out a program to locate the missing half billion acres.
And how did you set about this task?
Well, the Narcotics Bureau didn't have the funds to provide their own satellite, so they did the next best thing. They obtained the use of an obsolete Tyros satellite from the US Weather Bureau. Now, this particular Tyros was in good working order and in polar orbit, which meant that it was ideal for global surveillance.
I think you can best demonstrate this with the aid of the globe.
Come on, Goldie. Look, first we get a lesson in science fiction from the
Very well, Mr. Dryden, you may leave the witness box.
And now we're going to get a grand tour of a look. I do see that. The point is you
Now, Mr. Dryden, would you explain to the court...
Just a moment, please, Mr. Logan. Mr. Golding, who is that man?
He is Mr. Warren C. Turner, my lord, the accused American attorney.
Well, Mr. Warren C. Turner, I don't know if the disturbance you've been creating in this court is normal in America, but it is quite unacceptable here.
Yes, Your Honor.
It is usual to address me as my lord. And if
Yes,
you
my
wish to
lord.
communicate with Mr. Golding, will you please do so in whispers or by the use of surreptitious notes? Do you understand?
Well, what you actually do, you're actually going to let me...
Now, what is it?
I'm very sorry, my lord. I was explaining the meaning of the word surreptitious.
Very well, Mr. Logan. Continue.
My lord. Mr. Dryden, would you please explain to the court how you carried out your research with the Tyros satellite?
Certainly. Well, most Tyros satellites are in equatorial orbit, like so. Now, the disadvantage of such a satellite is that it can only take clear television pictures of the equatorial regions, whereas I'm also interested in the sub-equatorial regions. Now, the satellite that I have use of is in polar orbit, like this. Now, the advantage here is that as the satellite orbits the Earth, as we all know, rotates on its own axis. And during a complete cycle of orbits, every square inch of the Earth's surface comes beneath the TV cameras.
Yes, you said that you used an obsolete satellite, Mr. Dryden. Surely the pictures are not so clear that you can identify a particular crop.
That's true, my lord, but from the colour of the Earth and rainfall assessment, we can determine those areas where the poppy could grow and therefore eliminate those areas where it could not. From this data, we can then send out information to the Skylab astronauts as to which areas we want photographed in high-definition 70mm cameras. To expect them to photograph the entire area below them would be impossible. NASA have only allocated 20 man-hours a mission to narcotics work, survey work.
Has this work already been undertaken by previous Skylab missions?
Well, we're still analyzing the last photographs they took for us. So far, we've detected 100,000 acres in India, 20,000 acres in Chad and North Africa, and I forget the exact figures in China, but No, it's considerable. In all, we've detected about 250,000 acres. The cost effectiveness of the research is favourable, about 6 cents or 10 cents an acre and decreasing.
And would you tell the court the reasons for your dedication to your work, Mr. Dryden?
Yes. In 1959, I decided to devote the rest of my life in helping to stamp out the obscene traffic in narcotics. Because in 1959, my 18-year-old daughter died a horrible death in New York from heroin addiction.
Drink.
About $500,000, but the grant comes up for review again next year.
And why did you transfer your research to this country?
It's much cheaper to run a tracking station over here. And besides, with a polar orbit satellite, it can be located anywhere in the world.
But were there other reasons for using this country?
Yes, but they now seem rather silly.
Yes, counsel seems to think they're important, so I think we'd better hear them, Mr. Dryden.
It seems I was somewhat accident-prone in the United States.
You mean that while you were in the United States, there had been several other attempts upon your life?
I wouldn't go so far as to say that.
Really? But the Federal Bureau of Narcotics said so. They went even further. Exhibit 1, my lord. A statement from the head of the Narcotics Bureau. My learned friend has seen a document.
Now, the person who made this statement, is he going to be called as a witness?
No, my lord.
I have seen the document, my lord, and as it appears to have no bearing on the charge facing my client, I have no objection to it being introduced under the Criminal Justice Act.
Mm-hmm. Very well, Mr. Logan.
Thank you, my lord. Now, between 1966 and 1970, there were 6 attempts on the life of the British scientist Edgar Dryden. Mr. Dryden is working on a special project for this bureau, which will, if successful, make a significant contribution to stemming, or maybe halting altogether, the flow of illicit hard drugs into the United States. Following the second abortive attempt on Mr. Dryden's life, I detailed 2 officers to maintain a 24-hour watch on his movements. These men thwarted 4 further moves against Mr. Dryden. In my opinion, Mr. Dryden should be persuaded to transfer his operations to a military base where he will be free from outside interference. And it's signed by the head of the Narcotics Bureau, my lord.
You knew of these previous attempts on your life?
Yes, but I refused to be made virtually a prisoner at Edwards Air Force Base. That was another reason for my transfer to this country. Anyway, the Americans always over-dramatize everything.
Yes, well, 6 assassination attempts are not something to be played down, Mr. Dryden.
With one exception, they could have all have been accidents.
What was the exception?
A Cadillac tried to run me down. I managed to jump aside. It mounted the pavement, ran into a hydrant, backed and drove off.
So in 1970, you returned to this country and took over the offshore forts of Little Talon and Great Talon?
Yes, they suited me because, being a few miles off the coast, they were relatively free from electrical interference. It had nothing to do with safety.
I know those forts. The large one has a radar scanner on the top of a concrete tower.
Yes, my lord, that's my parabolic dish for receiving photographs from the Tyros satellite.
Did you purchase the forts?
No, my solicitor in Fulchester couldn't trace the owner.
So you occupy them rent-free?
Yes, you see, they were built during the Napoleonic War to guard the approach channels to Rockley Hard, which in those days was a busy port and shipbuilding centre.
I see.
Do you use both forts, Mr. Dryden?
No, Little Talon's too small, but Great Talon has the concrete tower and several outbuildings that the Observer Corps put up during the war.
Does shipping ever come near the forts?
No, they're surrounded by sandbanks which are constantly shifting. 200 years ago, the forts were either side of the main channel, but it's all silted up now. It's only safe for shallow draft vessels.
Such as the motor yacht Rasputin, owned by the accused?
Oh, my lord, my learned friend is constantly putting leading questions to this
Quite
witness.
right, Mr. Golding.
My lord, I didn't appreciate there would be any dispute over this. I shall be producing evidence to show that the motor yacht Rasputin, owned by the accused, did in fact spend 12 hours moored near Little Talon on the 3rd of October, the day before the attempt on Mr. Dryden's life.
Well, you'd better get on with it then.
Yes, my lord. Now, Mr. Dryden, did you ever see the accused yacht Rasputin near your forts?
Yes, for several days before the 3rd, they'd been stooging around shooting at sharks. I usually had a few hanging from the transom.
Was there any attempt to land on Great Talon?
Yes, but I always managed to scare them off by threatening them with distress rockets. I wasn't keen to meet the owner.
And did you ever see the accused yacht visit the other fort, that is Little Talon?
Yes, on the afternoon of the 3rd, as I was climbing the ladder to the tracking room.
The iron ladder set into the outside of the concrete tower.
Yes.
How often do you climb that ladder?
Once a day.
And when you saw the yacht Rasputin stooging around, did you form the impression that you were being watched?
My lord.
Yes, Mr. Logan, you really must confine yourself to what the witness saw and heard, not what he thought.
Yes, my lord. I have no more questions.
Mr. Dryden, does your research suggest that opium is being grown in Soviet bloc countries?
Yes.
Yes, and you tell us that your work is a threat to the world's illicit drugs industry because you can pinpoint possible opium fields to be photographed by the Skylab astronaut.
Yes.
But Mr. Dryden, the Skylab program is finished. No further Skylab missions are planned.
There's an Apollo orbital mission later this year, on July the 25th.
Oh, yes, the Apollo-Soyuz test program when Russian and American spacecraft will link up in orbit around the Earth.
Yes.
Yes, do you really think it likely that NASA will agree to their astronauts taking pictures of Soviet bloc countries with Russian cosmonauts looking over their shoulders?
Skylab photographs are only to back up my own findings. Besides, the Skylab is still in orbit. It could still be used.
But hardly likely, Mr. Dryden.
No, I suppose not.
No. Now, you saw my client's yacht Rasputin moored to Little Talon on the 3rd of October. What time did it leave?
4 in the afternoon.
And what other boats moored there that day?
Only Rasputin.
You kept watch at night?
No.
Then how do you know another boat or boats did not visit Little Talon during the night?
I should have heard the engines.
On a sailing boat?
But I've already told you, the area around the forts is shallow. Sailing vessels have a deep keel.
If you knew anything about sailing boats, Mr. Dryden, you would also know that many of them have keels which can be taken up into the center box so that they can navigate in shallow water. So, you cannot be certain that Rasputin was the only boat to visit Little Talon on the day before this so-called attempt on your life. Now, this picture we have of you, Mr. Dryden, of a dedicated scientist working in splendid isolation to avenge the death of his daughter, it's a rather dramatic picture, don't you think?
Tracking stations have to be in remote areas.
The only sound is the endless cry of seabirds borne on the wind, and the relentless eternal thunder of the sea as it beats against that pinnacle of knowledge where knowledge and the frontiers of that knowledge are being pushed ever outward.
They're your words.
No, Mr. Dryden. They're the words of your New York publicity agent.
Do you employ a publicity agent, Mr. Dryden?
A press agent, my lord.
Is it usual for a scientist to employ one?
Not so much in this country.
It doesn't fit, does it, Mr. Dryden? We have this picture of you as a man who shuns publicity, and now we learn that you actually employ a man to make sure that you get it. And very successful he is, too. Several appearances on American TV chat shows, lecture tours. One cannot help wondering why you spend so much of your precious time, on such things.
Publicity can help.
Especially in your case, yes?
I don't know what you mean.
Don't you? Well, you mentioned your grant, which comes up for review next year. Isn't it so that you received advance warning on the form that review will take?
Yes.
Yes, that your grant will be cut?
Yes.
Completely?
Yes, the United States government are trying to cut down on their expenditure.
On unnecessary expenditure?
My work is essential.
Well, it's important for you and your publicity agent to convince...
Press agent.
For you and your press agent to convince as many people as possible that it's essential, yes?
It could help.
Yes. Didn't you write to your publicity agent and...
Press agent.
As you wish. Press agent. Didn't you write to him some months ago and, to quote your own words, ask him to pull out all stops?
Yes.
Yes, well, he's certainly done so over the past few weeks with this case, hasn't he? Virtually every major American newspaper has carried the story of the British scientist whose life was threatened by the drug syndicate. Would you say that this publicity has been useful, Mr. Dryden?
Well, my lord, not only does the question call for conjecture on the part of the witness, but it is also immaterial whether or not the publicity was useful.
No, Mr. Logan. As Mr. Dryden has admitted that he employed an agent, it seems reasonable to suppose that he could judge whether that publicity was useful. Was it useful?
I suppose so.
There is no suppose about it. Was it useful?
Yes.
Now, turning to the method used for this attempt on your life, which my learned friend is being so secretive about, did you see the rifle set up on Little Talon?
The police show me it was trained on the ladder that led to the tracking room.
An ingenious method to kill someone, wouldn't you say?
Yes.
Set up by someone with a sound working knowledge of electronics.
Yes.
Had you that knowledge to set that method up?
The knowledge, but not the imagination. If someone had wanted such a thing, I could have made it, but it wouldn't have occurred to me otherwise.
Yes, as we seem to be dwelling on this method of assassination, I think it is high time it was explained to me and to the jury.
Yes, it is my intention to introduce it as soon as possible, my lord, if your lordship would consider sitting in camera.
Yes, well, having studied the depositions, I think I understand your reasons for such a request. However, the public has a right to know and to be fully informed of the dangers of technology in the wrong hands, and there seems to be no state security about it. Accordingly, I reject your application.
As your lordship pleases.
Now, do you have any more questions of this witness, Mr. Golding?
No, my lord, thank you.
I have no re-examination, my lord.
Thank you, Mr. Dryden. Now then, Mr. Logan, what about this equipment?
Yes, my lord. Would you bring the trolley in, please?
Mr. Logan,
My lord.
what is this?
This rifle and this TV camera were found by the police on Little Talon Fort. The rifle was trained on the iron ladder used every day by Edgar Dryden, and the accused, Daniel Wolfe, hoped to kill him at a distance of several miles from the safety of his yacht. Murder by television.
The case of the Queen against Wolfe will be resumed tomorrow in the Crown Court. Daniel Wolfe, a wealthy American with business connections in the American drug syndicate, is charged with the attempted murder of Edgar Dryden, a brilliant British scientist who's developed a technique to trace opium poppy fields by means of aerial photography from artificial satellites. He prefers to work alone, spending most of his time in his satellite tracking station on Great Talon, an offshore fort built during the Napoleonic Wars. Daniel Wolfe has been in trouble before with the FBI and various state authorities, but his wealth, brains and attorneys have kept him out of the American courts. Now, for the first time, he's in a British court. Oh, a minor irritation, and only a matter of time before he's released and allowed to return to his luxury motor yacht, Rasputin. Or so he believes.
What is your religion?
British Baptist.
Take the Bible in your right hand and read aloud the words on this card.
I swear by Almighty God that the evidence I shall give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Well, you are Dennis Gill, and you live at 14 Tennyson Avenue, Fulchester?
Yes.
And you're a senior engineer with the Independent Broadcasting Authority, Mr. Gill?
Yes.
Now, would you tell the court in your own words the events of the 4th of October of last year?
Yes. At that time, I was out in a site survey van, receiving test pictures on a new IBA relay station.
By relay station, you mean a television transmitter?
That's right, a new UHF colour transmitter on Walmsley Down.
Yes, I thought the whole of the country was covered by television by now.
Oh, not with colour, though. With the old black and white 405 line system, we could virtually cover the whole country with only 47 transmitters. With the new 625 line colour signal, it's not so obliging. There's no swirling effect, no filling in behind hills. Therefore, we need many more stations. Look, I'll show you. They're the old 405 line transmitters, 47 of them. And these are the new colour transmitters, 150 of them. We are going to need 450 to cover the country. We're opening new stations at the rate of one a week.
I see. So commercial television companies do not actually transmit their own programs?
Oh, no, sir. Transmission of ITV programs is an IBA responsibility.
Oh, I see. Thank you. I'm sorry, Mr. Logan. I seem to be leading Mr. Gill astray.
Would you describe your site survey van, Mr. Gill?
Well, basically, it's a 20 hundredweight Bedford van fitted with television receiving equipment. There's a steerable aerial on the roof which can be rotated from the inside so that it's pointed at the transmitter.
And what is the purpose of this van?
Well, when a new transmitter opens, we tour the area to assess picture and sound quality. The aerial can be extended to a height of 30 feet, the probable height of a domestic aerial when it's mounted on the rooftops. Whenever we show up, people think that we're the GPO detector van. They all rush off to buy their licenses.
So, at 10 a.m. on the 4th of October, you drove out with your van to the Walmsley Coast Road to carry out such a test. Is that correct?
Yes. There's a new housing estate planned for the area. So I parked the van and switched on the television receiving equipment. As I was tuning into channel 49, that's the channel of the new one, I picked up a signal on channel 65.
You received a picture?
Yes.
Will you describe that picture, please?
Well, it was a very weak signal to begin with, so I rotated the aerial till it became stronger. It was a picture of an iron ladder set into a wall. Superimposed on the picture was a T-shape, rather like the sights on a rifle. Well, that was odd enough, but what was even odder was that the signal was being received on channel 65.
Why should that be unusual?
Well, we don't use that channel, neither does the BBC. It's reserved for a fourth television channel that we'd like to have in the future.
So what did you do next?
I got out of the van and checked the aerial alignment.
To see where it was pointing?
Yes.
And where was it pointing?
At Little Talon Fort, about 3 miles out to sea and a little way down the coast from where I was. So I drove the van a few miles and took another reading. Again, maximum signal strength was picked up when it was pointing at Little Talon.
Could you see the fort?
Oh, yes, it was a clear day. Well, I telephoned Fulchester CID and told them that someone was making illegal television transmission from Little Talon Fort.
Did you describe the picture?
Yes. I spoke to Superintendent Walker. He told me to stay where I was for the time being. So I waited there for about an hour, then a police car came and picked me up and took me to Rockley Hard. From there I went by boat to Little Talon. And Mr. Walker was waiting for me. He wanted me to examine their equipment.
And where was that equipment?
It was set up in an old shed overlooking Great Talon Fort.
Will you look at the equipment in the court, please, Mr. Gill?
Very well, Mr. Gill, you may leave the witness box.
Are you familiar with such items?
All except the rifle.
And are these the pieces of equipment that you saw on Little Talon?
Yes.
Yes, would you describe their functions to the court, please?
Well, this, as you can see, is a rifle. These are telescopic sights. This is a miniature television camera whose lens is attached to the rifle's sights. The picture signal is fed along this cable here to this amplifier and transmitter here. From here, it's transmitted by this antenna.
That looks like an ordinary television aerial to me.
Oh, it is, sir. But a television aerial can also be used to transmit pictures as well as to receive them.
And where was this aerial mounted when you first saw it?
Outside the shed. The wood was rotten, and part of the bracket had been torn away, probably by the wind, so that the aerial, instead of transmitting pictures out to sea as it would have done in its original position, was actually transmitting pictures down the coast.
And what about this little gadget here, attached to the trigger on the rifle?
Now, that's an actuator, the type that's used in radio-controlled model aircraft to work the elevators and rudders.
Which in this case could be used to pull the trigger on the rifle?
Yes, if you had a transmitter for a radio-controlled model aircraft.
Such as this. Exhibit 6, my lord, the model aircraft transmitter found on board the accused yacht when she was arrested by the Royal Navy.
Yes, pressing this button would operate the trigger.
I see. And how far off could one be from this rifle with that gadget and still operate the trigger?
Or anything up to 20 miles over sea.
And what is the maximum range of that transmitter?
About the same.
Mr. Gill, that equipment seems rather small for a television transmitter.
Oh, you get them even smaller nowadays, sir. And as it has to transmit a very narrow beam, it doesn't have to be very powerful.
Presumably it needs electricity. Is there a main supply on the fort?
This is a rechargeable battery. Its output is sufficient to operate both the camera and the transmitter for at least 20 hours.
Yes. Was everything switched on when you examined it?
Oh, yes, the whole system was active.
So, Mr. Gill, with a radio-controlled transmitter such as that, it would be possible to fire this rifle from anything up to 20 miles away at whatever it happened to be aimed at.
Providing you had a television receiver capable of picking up the signal being transmitted.
Yes, such as this portable television set found on board the accused yacht. That's Exhibit 7, my lord.
Yes.
Yes, Mr. Gill, would you be kind enough to tune this set into channel 65? Now, members of the jury, that picture you see there is being transmitted by this camera attached to this rifle. Just as the picture of the iron ladder habitually used by Edgar Dryden was transmitted with the same equipment on Little Talon on the 4th of October. Thank you, Mr. Gill. Will you return to the witness box, please? Yes, I have no more questions, my lord.
That's what you mean.
Golding.
Yes, I'm sorry, my lord. Mr. Turner was explaining a surreptitious note to me. Mr. Gill, although you can pinpoint the exact spot where television transmissions originate, you cannot tell where a television set is used to receive these transmissions.
Not with my equipment.
No, so anyone within a 20-mile radius could have received that picture.
No, I only received the picture because I was on the edge of the beam. I doubt if anyone else on the mainland would have received it.
Yes, but you only doubt. You're not positive.
Well, there might have been a stray signal.
Exactly, yes. Thank you, Mr. Gill.
And does your lordship have any questions?
No, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gill. I now
Just
call...
a moment, Mr. Logan. Mr. Gill, it appears that you may have saved Mr. Dryden's life.
It was a matter of luck, really.
It's very lucky for Mr. Dryden that you happened to be about on October the 4th. Thank you for your assistance, Mr. Gill.
I now call Superintendent Walker of Fulchester CID.
Superintendent Walker, please.
At 10:45 a.m. on the 4th of October, my office received a telephone call from an IBA engineer, Mr. Dennis Gill, who claimed to be receiving a television picture from the Little Talon fort.
And did you know of Edgar Dryden's research activities on Great Talon?
Yes, I did.
And what was your reaction to the call from Dennis Gill?
I was extremely worried, as I know the nature of Mr. Dryden's research. I immediately contacted the pilot's office on Rockley Hard and asked them to prepare a boat to take me and two of my men out to Little Talon. I was there 45 minutes later.
And what did you find on Little Talon?
The gear there on the trolley.
Yes, you may leave the box, Superintendent, to examine the exhibit.
Thank you, my lord.
Is it set up now as you found it?
Yes, except that this television aerial was then fixed up outside the shed, and I noted that the mounting bracket had been torn away from the woodwork.
And what was the rifle aimed at?
It was aimed at an iron ladder set against the tower on Great Talon, 450 yards away.
Had the rifle been fired?
No, and I made certain that it would not be.
Ah, what did you do?
Without disturbing the rifle's aim, I opened the breech, like so, and removed this bullet.
So now the rifle was harmless, and what did you do next?
I remained beside the rifle and gave instructions that the motor yacht Rasputin was to be arrested immediately. The Coast Guard, the Rockley Hard Harbour Master, and the Royal Navy Fisheries Protection people had all been keeping a close watch on that vessel's movements on my behalf since the week previous and reporting back to my office.
When was the last such report?
8 a.m. that same morning. My information was that the Rasputin had bunkered with 30 tons of diesel fuel, 3,000 gallons of fresh water, paid her harbour dues, and left Rockley Hard.
And did you issue any other instructions?
Yes, I arranged for the IBA engineer Dennis Gill to be brought out to Little Talon. I wanted him to have a look at this slot.
And what did you do then?
I still remained standing by the rifle as I am now and kept watch on the ladder on Great Talon through my binoculars. At 10 minutes past noon, Mr. Dryden emerged from his quarters and began to climb the ladder. I then bent down and looked at the rifle's sighting through the camera viewfinder. The crossed hairs of the telescopic sight were aimed at a point halfway up the ladder. And just as Mr. Dryden's head coincided with the crossed hairs, there was a buzzing sound and the rifle's trigger actuated with a loud click.
Like this?
Exactly.
So, you had the unique experience of looking through the sights of a rifle at the precise moment when it was used in an attempt to kill someone.
Yes.
And what would have happened had you not removed that bullet?
Mr. Dryden would be dead.
No, my lord, the witness cannot be allowed to speculate in this way. There's the question of wind deflection.
My lord, that bullet would have killed Mr. Dryden. There was no wind. And furthermore, when we checked the rifle afterwards, we found that the sights had been zeroed at 450 yards, the exact distance between the rifle and the ladder.
And what was the exact time the trigger went off?
11 minutes past noon. And at 2 that afternoon, I went aboard the Rasputin, which the Royal Navy had escorted back to Rockley Hard. And I there arrested the owner, Daniel Wolfe.
And what else did you do?
I searched the vessel and took away 2 pieces of equipment. One, a radio-controlled transmitter, the type used for model aircraft, and 2, a portable television receiver.
Would you examine Exhibits 6 and 7, please, on the clerk's desk? Are those the items you saw on Rasputin?
Yes.
Thank you, Superintendent. You may return to the witness box.
Thank you.
Now, what was the result of the tests you made on those items?
We found that the portable television set was capable of receiving a picture from the camera on Little Talon. We also found that pressing a button on the radio control gadget operated the trigger of the rifle, as you have just demonstrated.
And where on the yacht were they found?
In the owner's stateroom.
Thank you, Superintendent.
Superintendent, would you say that the Rasputin is a luxury yacht?
Yes, very luxurious.
Yes, besides those items you removed, did you notice any other pieces of equipment in the stateroom?
There was a display panel which indicated the vessel's course and speed.
And hi-fi equipment?
Yes, there was a tape outfit with a couple of large speakers.
The kind of equipment, in fact, you would reasonably expect to find in the stateroom of a luxury yacht.
Yes.
Yes. And a portable television would come into the same category, would it not?
It was not a fixture. Everything else was properly installed. And then there was the radio control gadget for model aircraft.
Ah, yes. Did you ask the accused why he was in possession of such a gadget?
No.
You never asked my client if he was interested in model aircraft?
Well, we didn't find any when we searched the vessel.
Oh, but that doesn't mean to say he's not interested in them, does it?
No.
No. Now, you mentioned that you'd been keeping watch on the Rasputin for some time before this alleged offence took place, yet neither you nor my learned friend has seen fit to produce evidence as to why you did so. Now, is this another secret, Superintendent?
The Rasputin is not the type of yacht that normally visits these parts. The Solent or Torbay, but not around here.
So you had it watched on a whim?
If you like.
No, I do not like. It is quite wrong that visitors to this country, such as Mr. Wolfe, should be subjected to police surveillance as the result of a whim of a senior officer.
Does your lordship have any questions?
No, thank you.
I call Lieutenant Scott Temple.
What is your religion?
Church of England.
Take the Bible in your right hand and read aloud the words on this card.
I swear by Almighty God that the evidence I shall give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Lieutenant Scott Temple, are you the commanding officer of the torpedo gunboat Brave Huntsman?
Yes.
Would you describe to the court the events in the morning and early afternoon of the 4th of October of last year?
Yes. On that day, Huntsman was at Rockley Hard, where she was undergoing a floating refit. She'd been there about a week.
A floating refit?
Yes, her various deck fittings had been removed for renewal and overhaul. The sort of thing that can be done without the expense of putting in dry dock.
Nevertheless, Brave Huntsman was seaworthy.
Oh, yes, provided visibility was good. We'd already put to sea the day before to run some acceptance tests on her new hydraulic throttle controls.
Yes, what happened on the 4th of October?
Well, at 11:50, I received a signal from the police via the captain of Fisheries Protection to put to sea to nab a yacht they were after. A rather splendid American affair which we'd been admiring all week, called Rasputin. She had the silhouette of a monk on her transom.
Yes, quite. What time did you put to sea?
At 1200. It took me 10 minutes to muster a skeleton crew.
You were told that it was important that the yacht should be apprehended as soon as possible.
Oh, yes. We turfed the dockyard workmen off Huntsman and shot out of Rockley Hard like a champagne cork. Fisheries Protection gave us Rasputin's last known position as we left harbour, and about 10 minutes later, my coxswain spotted her about 6 miles down the coast on our port beam.
He saw her on the radar?
No, he was lookout. The radar had been removed for the refit. I doubt very much whether Huntsman would have been used if the visibility had been bad, but it's always the same with Fishery Protection work. They call on anything afloat if the frigate's not around.
What did you do when you spotted Rasputin?
I headed out to sea, having ordered full speed ahead, so that I could turn round and head her off in case she tried to run for open water.
And what did Rasputin do when she saw you coming?
Well, she did just that. Ran for open water. We tried everything to stop her. Flags, slow Morse by all Islam telling her to heave to. And we even tried calling her on the ship-to-ship RT, but either she wasn't listening or was ignoring us. And then she piled on about 20 knots, which didn't do her much good, as we could do 52, and in the end I tried running alongside her and bellowing at her bridge with the loud hailer.
Well, couldn't you have fired a shot across her bow?
That sort of thing went out years ago, but I might have been tempted to do so had I had a gun. It had been unshipped for the refit.
But she heaved to eventually?
Oh, yes. One of the ABs managed to drop her hawser over a stern post. Damn near pulled her transom off when I stopped engines. Then I shouted to the master and told him that I was quite happy to be towed all over the ocean until he ran out of fuel. Someone leaned over the transom and hurled abuse at us with a megaphone, but we're used to that sort of thing in the Navy.
What time did you eventually stop Rasputin?
12:40.
And what did you do next?
Well, I didn't have much of a crew in terms of numbers, so I decided to go aboard myself with an armed petty officer. We weren't exactly pipes aboard, though I did salute the quarterdeck. In fact, we found the crew to be somewhat abusive. We made our way to the bridge to pay our compliments to the captain and to ask him to accompany us back to Rockley Hard. He agreed, having mentioned something about pirates in uniform. And then we asked where the owner was, and he suggested we do something, or at least go somewhere. Well, as I didn't think we'd find him there, we made our way to the owner's stateroom.
And who was in there?
That gentleman there. He didn't exactly welcome us either. In fact, he has an excellent command of old English expletives. He told me to do something I considered to be physically impossible.
Yes, quite. What was he doing?
Well, you won't believe this, but he was trying to push a portable television out of a porthole and had got it jammed.
The case of the Queen against Wolfe will be concluded tomorrow in the Crown Court. On the 4th of October, Daniel Wolfe, a wealthy American involved in illicit drugs trafficking, attempted to murder the British scientist Edgar Dryden, who was perfecting a technique which used pictures taken from satellites to locate areas of the world where opium poppies are grown for the production of heroin. Wolfe's assassination method was ingenious. Dryden's tracking station was set up on a disused offshore fort called Great Talon. Wolfe landed from his yacht Rasputin on Little Talon, the smaller of two offshore forts, 450 yards from Great Talon, and trained a remote-controlled rifle on a ladder used each day by Dryden. With the aid of a miniature television camera attached to the rifle's sights, Wolfe hoped to kill Dryden from the safety of Rasputin many miles out to sea on his way home to America. The plan misfired, and Rasputin was arrested by a Royal Navy torpedo gunboat. Defense counsel is cross-examining the commanding officer.
I ask you again, Lieutenant Temple, was my client's motor yacht Rasputin in British territorial waters when you arrested her?
Yes, but only just. She was about 300 yards from the limit when we stopped her.
300 yards? But you said earlier there's always a chance of making an error when fixing your position. Now, can you be certain that you made no error when you arrested the Rasputin?
Well, there is a chance of error at sea, but we were hardly at sea. We were only a few thousand yards off a well-marked coast on a clear day. I was able to take accurate cross bearings on known landmarks.
Yes, but can you be 100% certain that you made no error when you fixed your bearings to your chart?
I made no mistake. Before we left Rockley Hard, I'd been requested to take particular care when fixing the position where she'd been arrested.
Yes, you said some of Brave Huntsman's deck fixtures had been removed by the dockyard. Had any of your navigational equipment also been removed?
Yes, the tack-hand beacon and Decker navigator, but that's electronic equipment. I didn't need it on such a clear day and being so near the coast. I was able to apply basic chart navigation, the sort of thing we learned during our first year at college.
Yes, but even so,
That will do, Mr. Golding. You've made your point. The witness is not going to change his account of his position. Now, would you please continue?
My lord, regardless of your position at the time of Rasputin's arrest, were you in territorial waters between noon and 15 minutes past noon?
Yes.
Did you check her position during these times?
Well, I was seaward of her then and bearing down on her. She tried to run for open water by crossing on my quarter, but she wasn't fast enough. We had her under constant observation from 12:10. From her speed, position, and course, she couldn't possibly have been in international waters at those times.
And yet she was close to them at the time of her arrest?
Well, yes.
Yes. And as you've already admitted that you were carrying a minimum of navigational equipment...
I never said anything
No,
of
my
the
lord,
sort.
my learned friend is belabouring a non-existent point. Even if it does exist, it's immaterial
Yes,
whether or not...
Mr. Logan. Now, Lieutenant Temple, are you certain that at no time did the Rasputin stray into international waters?
Yes, my lord, I'm absolutely certain.
Thank you. Golding.
Your answer to my learned friend's question suggested that my client's yacht tried to evade arrest.
Well, she did. She was doing 22 knots when we caught up with her. That's just about the maximum speed of her hull.
Rasputin's master could not have seen your ensign when you approached her, could he?
No, but we called her on the RT. Besides, a naval torpedo gunboat doesn't look like anything but a naval torpedo gunboat.
Oh, really? But you said that your gun had been unshipped for the refit.
Yes.
Yes, and your torpedo tube.
Yes.
And your ammunition lockers.
Yes.
Yes, also 2 chain pipes, a hydraulic winch, 2 depth charge throwers, and about 4 square yards of deck plating. You see, I suggest, Lieutenant Temple, that your torpedo gunboat looked like anything but a torpedo gunboat, and that the master of the Rasputin was fully justified in taking evasive action to avoid being run down by what he considered was a maniac in charge of a very fast boat.
Well, that's absurd. We ran alongside him for at least 5 minutes.
Yes, I've no more questions, thank you.
Does your lordship have any questions?
No, thank you. Thank you, Lieutenant.
That concludes the case for the prosecution, my lord.
When you're ready, Mr. Golding.
Thank you, my lord. I call David Chubb.
You are not calling your client?
No, my lord. David Chubb, please.
David Chubb, please.
What is your religion?
Church of England.
Take the Bible in your right hand and read aloud the words on this card.
I swear by Almighty God, the evidence I shall give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Are you David Chubb of Coast Guard House, Snare Rock Road?
Aye.
So now you the Coast Guard Station officer at the Snare Rock Coast Guard Station, Mr. Chubb.
Aye.
Yes. Now, how long have you been at Coast Guard, Mr.
Since
Chubb?
45. I've been in it 30 years now. I served as a petty officer on a corvette in the last lot.
Were you on duty at your Coast Guard Station on the 4th of October last?
I was on bell duty till 9, and I went on watch 9 to 1500.
Yes, bell duty is...
Standby.
I see, yes. So you were on duty during the late morning and the early part of the afternoon?
Aye.
Yes. Now, do you have a good view of the coast from your station?
Grandstand view. There wouldn't be much point in building a station there if you didn't, would there?
No. How far along the coast can you see on a clear day?
Right down to Rockley Hard and the Talon forts.
Yes. Was it clear on the 4th of October?
Like crystal.
And would you tell the court about anything unusual you saw on that day?
Aye. I saw a brave-class torpedo gunboat chasing a floating gin palace that the district officer had told us to keep an eye on.
Yes. Who is the district officer?
The old man, my boss. He told me the police were interested in keeping an eye on her.
Yes, quite. Now, what happened when the torpedo gunboat chased this boat?
Well, she wasn't fishing, but the Navy had got themselves worked up in a right old state. Thought she was going to ram.
What time was this?
40 afternoon, they got the gin palace to heave to. Right old state the Navy were in. Could hear their turbines up in my station. Sound like one of those 707 jets.
Yes, indeed. Now, did you have the yacht in view before her arrest?
Yeah, followed her right on the coast. We were told to keep an eye on her. I reckon she put out from Rockley Hard.
What was the yacht's name?
Rasputin.
And was she in territorial waters or international waters all the time you saw her?
International waters, just over the limit, all the time.
Mr. Chubb.
Sir.
We have heard in evidence that the Rasputin was in territorial waters before and at the time of her arrest.
Begging your pardon, sir, you didn't hear that from me.
We heard it from the commanding officer of the torpedo gunboat that arrested her.
Well, sir, there you are then. I mean, some of these Navy types today take away that decker and their bits of boxes of tricks and they're lost. Half of them think the Pole Star's a pub.
You realize that the commanding officer of Brave Huntsman is a full-time serving officer who probably uses navigation techniques as part of his daily routine.
Maybe he is, sir, but he doesn't have radar working from a fixed reference point on the coast like I have, has he, sir?
Do you have radar at your station?
Aye, sir.
Is that standard equipment for a Coast Guard station?
Well, it's not common, sir. Not yet. The St. Margaret station's got it to cover the Straits of Dover as part of the Channel Surveillance Service. Galston on the east coast have got it. Anywhere where there's a lot of shipping and plenty of navigation hazards, we have it on trial because the sands around our way are always on the move. A heavy storm will put up a new bar overnight. With radar, we can call up ships and warn them when they're heading for trouble.
Yes, but surely all ships are required to carry accurate charts.
Sure, sir, but the Navy Hydrographers Department, who update the charts, can hardly keep up. And most of the coasters plying that stretch don't keep their charts up to date anyway, sir.
Can you pinpoint the precise position of a ship near the coast in relation to?
Aye, sir, the coast shows up like a map on the radar display, and ships show up as blips. Well, all I did was read off the Gin Palace's position on the radar display and then measure a distance from the coast with dividers. With these things, sir. That Gin Palace was never in territorial waters any of the time, no matter what he says.
Well, this is utterly absurd. Here we have two obviously competent witnesses, and neither of them can agree on the simple question of a ship's position near the coast in broad daylight.
With respect, my lord, is the position of the accused yacht at the time of her arrest material? The Talon forts where the murder attempt took place are within the 3-mile limit.
Eh?
Now, what's the matter?
Well, what he said just then about the Talon forts being inside the 3-mile limit. Maybe they were 25 years ago, but they aren't now.
That's impossible, my lord. I understand the chart shows
Mr. Logan, there are no charts in evidence.
Is there a chart? No, my lord. There are none in court.
Well, if either you or Mr. Golding wish them to be produced, I'm quite agreeable to an adjournment. Mr. Golding?
My lord, it's becoming quite evident that we cannot proceed without these charts.
Very well, then. I shall adjourn now. Let me know if you need more than an hour.
All stand.
Now, members of the jury, Mr. Chubb has raised two very important points in his evidence. First, his assertion that the accused yacht was outside the 3-mile limit before and at the time of her arrest. Second, his statement that the Talon forts are also outside the 3-mile limit. Now, both counsel are agreed that these 2 points must be cleared up before we can proceed any further. So, in agreement with them, I've asked Mr. Chubb to stand down so that Lieutenant Scott Temple may explain to us his method of fixing the Rasputin's position at the time of her arrest. We'll deal with the Talon forts later when the chart comes from the Naval Hydrographer's office at Rockley Hard. Right.
Sea. Land. This line represents the coast. Here we have the Snare Rock. And here we have a disused lifeboat house. Over here is a buoy, which is marking a wreck. Now, these are all known marks shown on my chart. I fixed our position as soon as we heaved to. I read off the angle relative to the lifeboat house with a compass. I made the correction for deviation and variation from true north and transferred the line onto the chart. And next, I took the bearing from the Snare Rock and again transferred the line onto the chart. Now, that marks my position. But to prove it, I took a third bearing on the buoy. I then measured the distance between my position and the low tide mark and found it to be 2.6 nautical miles, 0.4 of a mile inside the 3-mile limit.
You are absolutely certain of that?
Absolutely, my lord. The third bearing line rarely intersects perfectly. It usually misses by a degree or so, and we end up with a sort of triangle here, what we call a cocked hat. But on this occasion, I had a perfect fix.
Any questions, Mr. Logan?
No, my lord.
Golding?
Thank you, my lord. Yes, now, what instrument did you use to take these bearings?
A compass.
A magnetic compass?
Yes.
Isn't it so that a magnetic compass does not point due north?
Yes, of course, it points to magnetic north, but I made the necessary corrections for variation.
Yes, isn't it also so that the ship itself introduces magnetic error, its engines and so forth?
Yes, but every ship has a deviation card which shows the error for that particular ship. It's read in conjunction with the ship's heading.
Every ship has a deviation card which is unique to that ship. It is drawn up when all the ship's machinery is in place.
Oh, my God, I think I see what you're driving at.
Exactly, Lieutenant Temple. Tell the court, please, just how much of Brave Huntsman's machinery was removed for the refit and the effect it would have on her magnetic compass. A gun, torpedo tubes, ammunition lockers, depth charge throwers, winches, deck plating. Several tons of ironmongery, wouldn't you say, Lieutenant Temple?
Yes, several tons.
Yes, enough to make nonsense of your calculations when you applied compass error to fix your position. How far out from your true position were you? Half a mile? Mile and a half? 2 miles?
I don't know.
I have no more questions for this witness, my lord.
My lord, I'm terribly sorry. I forgot that removing the deck equipment would... I'm sorry.
We all make mistakes, Lieutenant. You may sit down. Well, Mr. Logan, all we need now is to establish the position of the Talon forts. Have you any news of the chart?
No, my lord, I'm afraid it still hasn't arrived.
What in heaven's name? Ah, good. Is that the chart?
Yes, sir.
You want to put it in, Mr. Logan?
Yes, my lord.
Very well, then, let me have a look at it. Thank you. This had better be marked Exhibit 8. Just a moment, young lady. Do you work at the Navy Hydrographer's office?
Yes, sir.
Do you know something about charts?
Yes, sir. I did most of the corrections on that one.
Sounds as if we have another expert witness to contend with, Mr. Logan. Do you want her formally to produce the chart?
Yes, my lord.
Right. Swear her in.
Yeah, but I didn't know anything about what's going on.
So much the better. Swear her in.
Oh, look, they only sent me because I got a motorbike.
What is your religion?
Well, nothing really.
Let her affirm.
Please raise your right hand and read aloud the words on this card.
I do solemnly, sincerely, and truly declare and affirm that the evidence I shall give be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth.
Now, what is your name?
Gillian Angela Fisher.
And your address?
12. The Quayside. Rockley Hard. Rockley Hard.
Now, you are a trainee tracer at the Navy Hydrographer's office?
Yes, sir.
And how much longer do you have to do before you finish your training?
Another year, sir.
Another year. Well, now is your time to dazzle us with your knowledge. Thank you. Yes. I think you'd better come up here with me. Up here, beside me. Come on, I won't bite you. Now, would you please point out to me the 3-mile limit?
Well, it's not marked, sir.
What do you mean it's not marked? This chart is up to date, is it not?
Oh, yes, sir, but we don't mark the 3-mile limit, only the 12-mile limit. You see? It's there.
Ah, I see. Well, perhaps you could tell me whether the Talon forts are inside or outside the 3-mile limit.
Oh, yes, sir, but I need a pair of dividers.
Borrow mine if you like, sir. See, I get 'em back.
Thank you. Well, if I set the dividers, it's 3 miles, and place them on the low tide mark on the coastline nearest the forts. Little Talon is just outside the 3-mile limit, so is Great Talon.
Have you anything to say about that, Mr. Logan?
It would seem, my lord, that the case for the prosecution was based on out-of-date charts.
Why is the 3-mile limit not marked?
Don't know, sir.
Mr. Chubb, can you throw any light upon that?
Aye, sir. If ever we need to know where the 3-mile limit is, we sit down with a chart and work it out for ourselves. There's a procedure laid down in the fisheries manual, sir.
And it's not marked on the Ordnance Survey map?
No, sir.
So if there is an area of coastal erosion, such as there is opposite the Talon Fort, the 3-mile limit is constantly changing?
Aye, sir. The 3-mile limits were originally decided on because that was reckoned to be the maximum range of a cannon. I reckon the Talon forts were built just on the limit as it was in their day, sir, because they didn't want their cannonballs falling on Rockley Hard.
Well, it's absolutely absurd that although the jurisdiction of this court extends for 3 miles from the coast, no document appears, apparently, that definitely and adequately marks that boundary.
Well, it's not the Navy hydrographers' fault, sir. Their department comes under the Navy, and they get the chop as soon as there's any cut in defence spending, sir. I've heard it said that they're being transferred over to us, the Trade and Industry Department, sir.
Well, it would seem, Mr. Logan, Mr. Golding, that there's very little point in continuing with this farce.
I was about to suggest much the same thing, my
Mr.
lord.
Logan?
I'm bound to agree, my lord.
Well, members of the jury, it has become obvious that the incidents giving rise to this case took place beyond the jurisdiction of this court. What goes on foreign registered vessels on the high seas is of no concern to this court. And as learned counsel for the prosecution has conceded that the Talon forts are also outside the jurisdiction of this court, I have no alternative but to direct you to find the accused not guilty of the charges against him. Now, as an American citizen, the accused may have to answer to the American courts for what he does on the high seas, but he is not answerable to this court.
Do you find the accused guilty, Daniel Wolfe, guilty or not guilty of attempted murder?
My lord, may I ask a question on behalf of my fellow jurors?
Yes, by all means.
Well, you see, sir, with respect, we thought that the territorial waters extended for 12 miles, not 3, sir.
The 12-mile limit is only for the purpose of fishery protection. It was introduced a few years ago for that purpose only. In all other respects, the 3-mile limit stands.
Thank you, my lord. Oh, not guilty.
Well, I believe you have something to say, Mr. Logan, before I discharge the accused.
Yes, indeed, my lord. A copy for his lordship. It's a deportation order, my lord, signed by the Home Secretary this morning. Daniel Wolfe is to be held in custody and taken to London Airport this evening, where he will be placed aboard a plane bound for New York. And I understand that 2 of his fellow countrymen will act as his travelling companions.
Logan. Who were they?
Who?
Those two men who were going to act as his travelling companions. Narcotics or FBI?
FBI. One of Wolf's associates had given them enough evidence to nail him for good, or maybe longer.
Justice sometimes works in strange ways. Good night.
When it works.
Our cameras return to bring you another leading case in the Crown Court.